The train lurched to a grinding halt at Granite, Colorado, and Hannah Vickers stumbled onto the platform with legs that had forgotten how to hold her weight, her vision blurring at the edges as the August sun beat down mercilessly on the high mountain valley. She had been traveling for 6 days straight from Philadelphia, changing trains 3 times, sleeping in cramped seats when exhaustion finally overtook her grief. And now that she had finally arrived at this dusty frontier town in 1878, her body simply refused to cooperate any longer. Her black mourning dress clung to her skin, damp with perspiration despite the dry Colorado air, and the carpetbag she clutched seemed to weigh more than she did. The platform spun before her eyes and she reached for the rough wooden post beside her, but her fingers only grazed it before her knees buckled completely. She heard voices calling out in alarm, felt gravel pressing against her cheek, tasted dust on her tongue. Strong hands lifted her from the ground with surprising gentleness, and through the haze of exhaustion, she glimpsed a sun-weathered face framed by dark hair beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "Easy now, miss. I have got you," a deep voice said, steady and calm. "You are safe." Hannah wanted to protest, to insist she could stand on her own, but the words would not come. Her entire body had simply given up after carrying her through 600 miles of grief and uncertainty. She felt herself being lifted higher, cradled against a broad chest that smelled of leather and pine and honest work, and then she was being settled onto something padded and soft. "Someone fetch Dr. Morrison," the same voice commanded with quiet authority. "And get some water from the well, cold as you can find it." Hannah forced her eyes open and found herself lying in the back of a wagon on what appeared to be folded blankets. The man who had lifted her stood beside the wagon, his hand still steadying her shoulder, and she could see him properly now. He was tall and lean, with the kind of build that came from years of hard labor, probably in his late 20s, with dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar, and eyes the color of amber whiskey. His face had the tanned, lined look of someone who spent his days under the open sky, but there was kindness in those eyes that made something tight in Hannah's chest loosen just slightly. "Thank you," she managed to whisper, her throat dry as sandpaper. "I am sorry. I do not usually. No need to apologize," he said, and she caught the hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "When did you last eat, or sleep properly?" Hannah had to think about it, which was answer enough. "Pittsburgh, I think, 2 days ago." He shook his head, not in judgment but in something like concern. "Well, that explains it. I am Quinn Everett, and you are not going anywhere until we get some food and water in you and make sure you are truly all right." "Hannah Vickers," she replied, trying to sit up but finding that her arms still trembled too much to support her weight. "I am supposed to meet my uncle, Silas Vickers. He owns the general store." Quinn's expression shifted, something unreadable passing across his features. "Silas Vickers passed 3 weeks ago, miss. I am real sorry to tell you that way, but I reckon you should know straight off." The words hit Hannah like a physical blow, even though some part of her must have been expecting them. She had received a telegram from her uncle 2 months ago, telling her he was ill and asking her to come help him with the store. She had been making arrangements to travel when the second telegram arrived, this one from someone named Margaret Fletcher, saying that Silas had taken a turn for the worse, and she should come immediately. By the time Hannah had settled her affairs in Philadelphia and made the journey west, too much time had passed. "I see," she said quietly, and felt the last of her strength drain away. Her uncle had been her only living relative after her parents had died in a fire 3 months earlier. She had sold everything she owned to afford the train ticket west, banking on the promise of a new start in Colorado. Now she had nothing and no one, stranded in a town where she knew not a single soul. Quinn seemed to sense the despair washing over her because he squeezed her shoulder gently. "Listen to me, Hannah Vickers. Right now you need rest and food in that order. Everything else can wait. My ranch is about 2 miles outside of town. You can stay there tonight, get your strength back, and tomorrow we will figure out what comes next. I promise you, things look better when you are not about to collapse from exhaustion." "I could not possibly impose," Hannah said automatically, even though the thought of finding somewhere to stay on her own seemed impossible in her current state. "I have a little money. Perhaps there is a boarding house." "The only boarding house in Granite burned down last winter," Quinn said matter-of-factly. "There is the hotel above the saloon, but it is no place for a lady on her own, especially not one who looks like she might blow away in a strong wind. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, will be happy for the company. She is always telling me the place is too quiet with just me rattling around in it." A woman appeared at the side of the wagon carrying a tin cup brimming with water. She was perhaps 50, with kind eyes and flour dusting her apron. "Poor dear," she said, helping Hannah sit up enough to drink. "You gave us quite a scare collapsing like that. I am Margaret Fletcher. I sent you that telegram about your uncle." Hannah drank gratefully, the cold water soothing her parched throat. "Thank you for letting me know about Uncle Silas. I wish I could have arrived sooner." "He held on as long as he could," Margaret said gently. "He talked about you often those last weeks, said he was looking forward to having family nearby again. He left the store to you in his will, dear. Everything he had, it all goes to you." This information should have brought relief, but Hannah felt only numbness. She had never wanted an inheritance. She had wanted to know her uncle, the man her father had spoken of with such fondness during her childhood. She had wanted a place to belong after losing everything else. "The store is still standing," Quinn said, reading something in her expression. "It has been closed since Silas took ill, but Margaret here has the key. Like I said, all of that can wait until tomorrow." Hannah nodded, too tired to argue further. Quinn climbed up onto the wagon seat and clicked his tongue at the 2 horses hitched to the front. The wagon lurched into motion, and Hannah lay back against the blankets, watching the late afternoon sky slide past overhead. The rhythmic creaking of the wagon wheels and the steady clip-clop of hooves began to lull her towards sleep, despite her determination to stay awake. "Rest if you need to," Quinn called back to her. "It is a smooth road, and I will wake you when we arrive." Hannah closed her eyes, meaning only to rest them for a moment, but exhaustion pulled her under like a tide. She dreamed of fire and smoke, of her mother's face in the window of their Philadelphia townhouse, of endless train rides that went nowhere. When she woke, the sun was lower in the sky and the wagon had stopped in front of a sturdy ranch house built of honey-colored timber with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Quinn appeared at the back of the wagon, offering his hand to help her down. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Hannah said, and was surprised to find it was true. The sleep, brief as it had been, had cleared some of the fog from her mind. She took his hand and climbed down from the wagon, grateful when her legs held steady beneath her. The front door opened and a small Chinese woman emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 60, with silver threading through her black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at Hannah and began speaking rapidly in what Hannah assumed was Cantonese, gesturing at Quinn with what appeared to be a mixture of concern and scolding. Quinn responded in halting Cantonese, which made the woman's expression soften slightly. She switched to English, her accent thick but her words clear. "You bring home half-dead girl and do not send word ahead. Quinn Everett, you have no sense." "Come, come," she said to Hannah, taking her arm with surprising gentleness. "You need food, bath, clean clothes. I am Mrs. Chen." You stay here, eat proper, sleep proper, yes. I do not want to be any trouble, Hannah began, but Mrs. Chen waved her hand dismissively. No trouble. This house too quiet anyway. Good to have woman here who not smell like cows and horses. She shot Quinn a pointed look that made him grin. I will see to the horses, Quinn said. Mrs. Chen, maybe heat some of that beef stew from lunch, and there should be bread left. Mrs. Chen was already guiding Hannah toward the house, keeping up a steady stream of observations about how too thin Hannah was, how city clothes were no good for Colorado, how men could not be trusted to take care of anything properly. Despite her exhaustion, Hannah found herself smiling. There was something comforting about Mrs. Chen's no-nonsense manner, about being fussed over even by a stranger. The inside of the ranch house was surprisingly well appointed, with solid furniture that showed the marks of fine craftsmanship and windows that let in the golden evening light. Mrs. Chen led her to a bedroom on the first floor, neat and clean with a bed covered in a colorful quilt. You rest here while I heat water for bath, Mrs. Chen said. Then eat, then sleep. Tomorrow worry about everything else. Left alone, Hannah sank onto the edge of the bed and looked around the room. A small mirror hung on the wall, and she caught sight of her reflection. Hair falling loose from its pins, face pale except for spots of color on her cheeks, dark circles under her eyes. She looked like a ghost of herself, worn down by grief and travel until hardly anything remained. She thought about her uncle, dead and buried before she could ever really know him. She thought about the store that was apparently now hers, a responsibility she had not asked for and was not sure she wanted. She thought about Quinn Everett lifting her from the ground with such care, about the concern in his eyes, about how he had brought a complete stranger into his home without hesitation. Mrs. Chen returned with 2 large buckets of steaming water, which she poured into a copper tub in the corner of the room. She made 3 more trips, then laid out soap and a clean towel. You wash, put on this, she said, indicating a simple cotton nightgown draped over a chair. Your dress need cleaning. Tomorrow I find you something better to wear. You have been so kind, Hannah said, feeling tears prick at her eyes. Both of you, I do not know how to thank you. Mrs. Chen patted her cheek gently. You say thank you by getting strong again. Now wash, then come to kitchen. Food will be ready. After Mrs. Chen left, Hannah undressed with trembling fingers and sank into the warm water. It felt like heaven after days of train soot and dust. She scrubbed her skin and hair clean, taking her time, letting the warmth seep into her bones. When she finally emerged, she felt more human than she had since leaving Philadelphia. The nightgown was too large, clearly meant for someone taller, but it was clean and soft. Hannah toweled her hair as dry as she could and padded barefoot to the kitchen, following the scent of beef stew and fresh bread. Quinn sat at the kitchen table, cleaned up from his earlier work, his hair still damp from washing. He stood when she entered, a gesture of courtesy that seemed so natural to him he probably did not even think about it. Sit, sit, Mrs. Chen commanded, ladling stew into a bowl. Eat while hot. Hannah sat across from Quinn and picked up her spoon. The first bite was heaven, rich and savory, and she had to stop herself from eating too quickly. Beside the stew was thick slices of bread with butter, and Mrs. Chen poured her a glass of cold milk. Mrs. Chen is the finest cook in 3 counties, Quinn said, breaking off a piece of bread for himself. I tried to steal her from the Wang family up in Leadville, but she says she stays for the scenery. I stay because you pay good and do not complain about my cooking, Mrs. Chen corrected, but there was affection in her voice. Also because you let me plant vegetable garden and do not try to make me cook possum or prairie dog like some cowboys. Hannah found herself smiling despite everything. "How long have you worked here?" "5 years now," Mrs. Chen said. "Quinn father hire me when his wife getting too sick to keep house. I stay after she pass, help Quinn with his little sister until she marry and move to Denver. My mother died 6 years ago," Quinn explained. "Cancer. And my father passed 2 years after that. Heart gave out. My sister Emma married a banker and seems happy enough in the city, though she claims to miss the ranch." "She not miss ranch," Mrs. Chen said dryly. "She miss not having to wear corset every day." Quinn laughed at that, a warm sound that filled the kitchen. Hannah ate her stew and listened as they bantered back and forth, feeling some of the terrible loneliness of the past months begin to ease. These were good people, she thought. Kind people. Whatever happened next, at least she had found that much in Granite. "Tell me about the town," Hannah said after a while. "Uncle Silas wrote about it some, but I would like to know more." Quinn leaned back in his chair, considering. Granite sprung up about 8 years ago when they found silver in the mountains nearby. It boomed fast, probably 500 people at the peak, but things have settled down now. Maybe 300 residents, most of them decent folk trying to make an honest living. We have got the general store, which was your uncle's. A saloon, a church, a school with about 20 students, a blacksmith, a livery stable, and a few other businesses. Dr. Morrison, who I called for earlier, he lives above his practice. We get supply wagons once a week from Leadville, and there is talk of the railroad extending a spur up this way eventually. "What about your ranch?" Hannah asked. "Cattle mostly, some horses. I run about 200 head on 4,000 acres. It is not the biggest operation in Colorado, but it is mine, paid for fair and square. I have got 4 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse and help with the work. Good men, all of them. Your uncle's store is doing good business," Mrs. Chen added. "People need supplies, and closest other store is in Leadville, 2 hours by wagon. You keep it open, you make good living." Hannah set down her spoon, the food sitting heavy in her stomach. "I do not know anything about running a store. I was a seamstress in Philadelphia, working in a dress shop. I can sew and do embroidery, but managing inventory and accounts." "Your uncle kept good records," Quinn said gently, "and folks around here would help you learn. Margaret Fletcher worked in the store sometimes, helping Silas when things got busy. She knows the inventory, knows the customers. I am sure she would help you get started." "Why are you being so kind to me?" Hannah asked suddenly. "You do not know me at all." Quinn met her eyes steadily. "My father taught me that you judge a man or a woman by how they treat strangers who cannot do anything for them in return. You needed help, I had the means to give it. It is as simple as that." "Not everyone thinks that way," Hannah said quietly. "No," Quinn agreed, "but the ones worth knowing do." Mrs. Chen began clearing the dishes, shooing Hannah away when she tried to help. "You go sleep now. Tomorrow is big day, many things to figure out. You need rest." Hannah did not argue. The food and bath had helped, but exhaustion still pulled at her. She bid Quinn and Mrs. Chen good night and returned to the bedroom, where she climbed between clean sheets that smelled of lavender. The bed was more comfortable than any she had slept in for weeks, and the house was quiet except for the occasional creak of settling timber and the distant call of a night bird. She thought she would lie awake worrying about the future, about the store and her uncle and what she would do now. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately and slept without dreaming until sunlight streamed through the window, and a rooster crowed somewhere outside. When Hannah emerged from the bedroom, dressed again in her black morning dress that Mrs. Chen had somehow cleaned and pressed overnight, she found the housekeeper already at work in the kitchen making pancakes. Quinn sat at the table with what looked like account books spread before him, making notes with a pencil. "Good morning," Hannah said, and was pleased to find her voice steady and strong. Quinn looked up and smiled. "You have got more color in your face today. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months," Hannah admitted. "Thank you again for your hospitality." "Sit, eat, Mrs. Chen commanded, sliding a plate of pancakes onto the table. "Then Quinn take you to town, show you store, let you see what you have." Over breakfast, Quinn explained that he had business in town that morning anyway, so he would be happy to take her in the wagon and introduce her to some of the townspeople. Mrs. Chen had laid out a dress that had apparently belonged to Quinn's mother, a simple calico print in blue that fit Hannah reasonably well after a few quick adjustments. "You cannot wear black in summer heat," Mrs. Chen said firmly when Hannah protested. "Your uncle understand. Your parents understand. They want you healthy, not dead from heat stroke." The ride into town gave Hannah her first real look at the Colorado landscape in daylight. Mountains rose in every direction, their peaks still touched with snow despite the August heat. The valley where Granite sat was a patchwork of grassland and scattered pine trees, with a creek running through the middle that sparkled in the morning sun. The air was thinner than in Philadelphia, dry and clean, and the sky seemed impossibly vast. "It is beautiful," Hannah said, and meant it. "It grows on you," Quinn said. "I have been to Denver a few times, and Emma keeps trying to convince me to visit her more often, but I always feel like I cannot breathe properly in the city. Too many people, too many buildings. Out here, you have got room to think." Granite appeared as they crested a rise, a collection of wooden buildings clustered along a single main street with a few side roads branching off. It was smaller than Hannah had imagined, but there was something solid and real about it that the endless sprawl of Philadelphia had lacked. Quinn pulled the wagon to a stop in front of a two-story building with a sign that read, "Vickers General Store" in faded paint. The windows were dusty and the door was locked, but through the glass, Hannah could see shelves stocked with goods and a counter with a cash register. Margaret Fletcher emerged from the building next door, which appeared to be a boarding house under reconstruction. "Hannah, dear, you look so much better today. Quinn, thank you for taking care of her." "It was no trouble at all," Quinn said, climbing down from the wagon and offering Hannah his hand. Margaret produced a key from her apron pocket and unlocked the store door. "I have been checking on things every few days, making sure no one breaks in, but I have not had the heart to do much else." Silas was so proud of this place. Inside, the store smelled of wood and coffee and the indefinable scent of dry goods. The shelves were well stocked with everything from canned foods to bolts of fabric, from tools to medicines. Behind the counter was a small office area with a desk, more account books, and a safe built into the wall. "He left you the building too," Margaret explained. "He owned it outright, no mortgage. The apartment upstairs is small but comfortable. That is where he lived." Hannah walked slowly through the store, running her fingers along the counter, looking at the careful inventory labels written in her uncle's hand. She had never met Silas Vickers, but she felt his presence here in every carefully arranged display, every notation in the ledgers. "The accounts are all current," Margaret continued. "Silas was meticulous about that. He has got $300 in the bank, and the store usually brings in about $50 a week in profit after expenses. It is a good business, Hannah. It would be a shame to see it close." "I am not sure I can do this," Hannah said honestly. "I have never run a business before." "Neither had Silas when he started," Margaret pointed out. "He learned. You can too. And like Quinn said, folks around here will help." Quinn had been examining the shelves with interest. "You are low on coffee and sugar, and it looks like you need more ammunition and gun oil. Men around here go through that fast, but otherwise the inventory looks solid." "How do you know what the store needs?" Hannah asked. He grinned at her. I am one of your customers, or I was anyway. I hope I still will be if you decide to stay. When is the next supply wagon due? Hannah asked Margaret, feeling something spark to life inside her. It might have been determination or desperation, or some combination of the two. Day after tomorrow, Margaret said, and Hannah could see hope dawning in her eyes. Thursday morning. The supplier is a man named Robert Chen out of Leadville. He is Mrs. Chen's nephew, actually. He will need to know what you want to order. Mrs. Chen's nephew. Hannah repeated, glancing at Quinn. Coincidence, Quinn said. Though it means you will get fair dealing. Robert is honest and he will not try to cheat you on prices. Hannah took a deep breath. All right, I need to go through Uncle Silas's records and see what he usually orders. And I should probably introduce myself to people in town, let them know the store will reopen. When can I move into the apartment upstairs? Whenever you like, Margaret said. I cleaned it after Silas passed, changed the linens, aired it out. It is ready for you. Tomorrow then, Hannah decided. That gives me today to go through everything and make a list for the supply order. Quinn nodded approvingly. That is good thinking, and you will need to check the prices in the ledgers against what Robert quotes you. Make sure everything matches up. Would you like me to come by later, help you with the heavy lifting? There is probably inventory that needs to come down from the high shelves for you to count. I would appreciate that very much, Hannah said. Over the next several hours, Hannah immersed herself in the records and inventory of Vickers' general store. Margaret stayed to help explain her uncle's system, which turned out to be quite logical once Hannah understood it. Each item had a card showing the current stock level and the minimum reorder point. When something dropped below that minimum, it went on the next supply order. The prices were clearly marked, and the profit margins were consistent across most items. Quinn left to conduct his other business in town, but returned around noon with sandwiches from the saloon and a tall man he introduced as Dr. Morrison. The doctor was perhaps 40, with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. I wanted to check on you after yesterday's incident, Dr. Morrison said after greetings had been exchanged. That was quite a collapse you had at the station. I am feeling much better today, Hannah assured him. It was exhaustion and hunger, nothing more. He examined her anyway, checking her pulse and listening to her breathing, asking questions about her health history. Finally, he nodded, satisfied. You seem recovered, but I want you to promise me you will eat regularly and get proper rest. The altitude here can take some adjusting to, and you have been through significant stress. If you feel dizzy or weak again, send for me immediately. I promise, Hannah said. After the doctor left, she and Quinn ate their sandwiches while going through the inventory together. He proved surprisingly helpful, pointing out which items sold quickly and which tended to sit on the shelves for months. He also suggested a few things her uncle had not stocked that might sell well. Women come in here mostly to buy fabric and thread, Quinn observed. But I bet they would appreciate ready-made items too. Needles, buttons, maybe some lace trim, and hair ribbons for the girls. Mrs. Chen orders things like that from a catalog, but she would rather buy local if she could. Did you help my uncle with the store? Hannah asked. Sometimes, Quinn admitted. When he was getting the heavy shipments in, I would lend a hand. Silas was a good man, but he was not young anymore. The work was getting hard for him. How old was he when he died? 67, I believe. He came to Colorado after the war, said he wanted a fresh start somewhere nobody knew him. Never talked much about his past, but he treated everyone fair and honest. People respected him for that. Hannah felt a pang of regret that she would never hear her uncle's stories herself. My father used to say that Silas was the brave one in the family. He left Ohio when he was 18 and went to California during the gold rush. Father said he tried everything: mining, shipping, trading. I guess he ended up here eventually. The war changed a lot of men, Quinn said quietly. Made them want to start over somewhere new. Were you in the war? Hannah asked, then immediately regretted the question. I am sorry, that was forward of me. No, I was too young, Quinn said. I was 8 when it ended, but my father fought for the Union, came home different from how he left. He did not talk about it much either. They worked in companionable silence for a while, and Hannah found herself stealing glances at Quinn when she thought he was not looking. He moved with easy confidence, lifting heavy crates as though they weighed nothing, reaching the high shelves without needing a ladder. There was something compelling about his quiet competence, the way he seemed completely comfortable in his own skin. By late afternoon, Hannah had a complete inventory list and had drafted an order for the supply wagon. Margaret returned with news that word had spread about the store reopening, and several people wanted to know when they could start shopping again. Tell them day after tomorrow, Hannah said with more confidence than she felt. Once the new supplies arrive, I will open for business. That evening, Quinn drove Hannah back to the ranch for one more night. Mrs. Chen had prepared a feast to celebrate Hannah's decision to stay in Granite, and the 4 ranch hands joined them for dinner. They were rough men, weathered by outdoor work, but respectful and welcoming. They asked Hannah questions about Philadelphia and told her stories about Colorado, and she found herself laughing for the first time since her parents had died. After dinner, Quinn walked with her out to the porch to watch the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. The evening air was cool and fresh, scented with pine and wildflowers. Thank you for everything you have done for me, Hannah said. I do not think I would have made it through these past 2 days without your help. You would have managed, Quinn said. You are stronger than you think. I do not feel strong, Hannah admitted. I feel like I am one wrong step away from falling apart. Quinn was quiet for a moment, then said, When my mother died, I thought the world had ended. She was the heart of this family, the one who held us all together. After she passed, it felt like nothing would ever be right again. My father was lost without her. Emma cried herself to sleep every night, and I tried to hold the ranch together even though I was barely 21 and did not know what I was doing. How did you get through it? Hannah asked softly. One day at a time, Quinn said. Some days 1 hour at a time. Eventually the grief becomes something you carry instead of something that carries you. It never goes away completely, but it gets easier to bear. Hannah felt tears prick at her eyes. I miss them so much. My parents. I keep forgetting they are gone, and then I remember and it is like losing them all over again. I know, Quinn said, and his voice was full of understanding. I am truly sorry you are going through this. They stood in silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. When the first stars appeared, Quinn said, I will take you into town tomorrow morning with your things, and I will check on you regularly, make sure you are settling in all right. If you need anything at all, you send word to the ranch. You have already done so much, Hannah protested. Hannah, Quinn said, and the way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. I want to help. Please let me. She nodded, not trusting her voice. There was something in his eyes, a warmth and interest that made her pulse quicken, but she pushed the feeling away. She was in mourning, grieving her parents and adjusting to a completely new life. This was no time to be noticing the way Quinn's eyes crinkled when he smiled, or how safe she felt when he was nearby. The next morning, Quinn loaded Hannah's carpet bag into the wagon along with some supplies Mrs. Chen had packed: food for her pantry, a quilt for her bed, and curtains for the apartment windows. Mrs. Chen hugged Hannah tightly before she left. You come visit, she commanded. Do not sit alone in town feeling sorry. You come here for Sunday dinner, yes?" "Yes," Hannah agreed, hugging her back. "Thank you for everything." The apartment above the general store was indeed small, just 2 rooms and a tiny kitchen area, but it was clean and private. Quinn helped her carry everything upstairs and check that the stove worked and the lamps had oil. Before he left, he hesitated at the door. "Hannah, I want you to know something. If any of the men in town bother you or if anyone gives you trouble about running the store, you come tell me. A woman alone in business, sometimes folks get ideas. But you are not alone, understand? You have got friends here." "Thank you, Quinn," Hannah said. "That means more to me than you know." After he left, she spent the rest of the day preparing for the store's reopening. She swept and dusted, polished the counter until it gleamed, arranged the displays to show items to their best advantage. When the supply wagon arrived the next morning, Robert Chen proved to be as honest as Quinn had promised, checking off each item carefully and explaining the prices. Hannah paid him from the cash in the safe, feeling both nervous and exhilarated by the transaction. "You need anything, you send word," Robert said as he prepared to leave. "My aunt says you good person. That is enough for me." By noon, Hannah had integrated the new supplies into the inventory and felt ready to open. She propped the door wide, turned the sign from closed to open, and waited with her heart pounding. The first customer was Margaret Fletcher, who came in with a warm smile and purchased coffee, sugar, and a length of calico fabric. "The fabric is for you," she explained. "You will need more than one dress, and I am not bad with a needle if you need help sewing." Others followed throughout the afternoon. A woman named Sarah Brennan bought flour and baking powder and invited Hannah to church on Sunday. The blacksmith, a burly man named Tom Wright, stocked up on nails and horseshoe rivets. A young boy came in for penny candy and stared at Hannah with wide eyes, as though a woman running a store was the strangest thing he had ever seen. By the time Hannah closed up that evening, she had made nearly $12 in sales and met perhaps 20 of Granite's residents. She was exhausted but satisfied as she climbed the stairs to her apartment and heated soup for dinner. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Hannah opened the store each morning at 8 and closed at 6. She learned her customers' names and what they typically purchased. She studied her uncle's ledgers to understand the seasonal patterns of business. She sewed new dresses for herself in the evenings and learned to cook simple meals on her small stove. Quinn came by at least twice a week, always with some excuse. He needed supplies, or he was checking on a shipment, or he wanted to make sure the heavy crates had been properly stored. Hannah began to look forward to his visits, to the easy conversation they shared, and the way his presence made the store feel warmer somehow. One Saturday afternoon in early September, Quinn arrived with news that there would be a dance that evening in the town square to celebrate the end of the harvest season. "You should come," he said. "It would be a good way to meet more people, and the food is always excellent." Hannah glanced down at her black dress. She had made 2 new dresses since arriving in Granite, but both were somber colors appropriate for mourning. "I am not sure it would be proper. My parents have not been gone even 6 months. "Your parents would want you to live," Quinn said gently. "And you do not have to dance if you do not want to. Just come for the food and the company." In the end, Margaret convinced her, appearing at the store an hour before the dance with a dress of deep green that had belonged to her daughter. "Alice is married and living in Denver now, and this color never suited her anyway. Try it on." The dress fit beautifully, bringing out the green in Hannah's hazel eyes. Margaret helped her pin up her hair, leaving a few curls loose to frame her face. When Hannah looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. For the first time since her parents died, She looked young and alive instead of pale and grief-stricken. The town square had been transformed with lanterns hanging from rope lines and tables groaning with food. A three-piece band played fiddle music, and couples danced while children ran shrieking between the tables. The whole town seemed to have turned out for the celebration. Quinn found Hannah almost immediately, his eyes widening when he saw her. "You look beautiful," he said, then seemed surprised by his own boldness. "I mean, the dress is very becoming." Hannah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Thank you. Mrs. Fletcher was kind enough to lend it to me." "Would you like to dance?" Quinn asked, offering his hand. Hannah hesitated. She had not danced since before her parents died, and some part of her felt it was wrong to find joy so soon after such loss. But another part of her, the part that was young and alive and tired of being sad, wanted desperately to say yes. "I am not sure I remember how," she said finally. "Then I will teach you," Quinn said with a smile. He led her to where couples were swirling in a simple reel. Quinn's hand was warm on her waist, his other hand clasping hers firmly, and then they were moving. Hannah stumbled at first, but Quinn guided her patiently, and soon she found the rhythm. The music was lively and joyful, and she could not help but smile as they turned and stepped. "There," Quinn said, grinning down at her. "You are a natural." They danced 3 more dances, and Hannah felt something shift inside her. The grief was still there, would always be there in some form, but it no longer felt like it would crush her. She could breathe again. She could laugh. She could notice the way Quinn looked at her, with warmth and something deeper that made her heart race. After the 4th dance, they took a break to get food. Hannah filled her plate with roasted chicken and fresh bread and vegetables from someone's garden. They found a spot to sit under one of the lanterns, and Quinn introduced her to more townspeople. Everyone was friendly and welcoming, and several people mentioned how glad they were that the general store had reopened. As the evening wore on, the music slowed to gentler melodies. Couples paired off for waltzes, and Hannah watched them with a mixture of longing and contentment. Quinn appeared at her elbow with 2 cups of lemonade. "One more dance?" he asked. This time when Hannah took his hand, it felt natural and right. They moved together across the makeshift dance floor, and Hannah let herself relax into his lead. He was a good dancer, sure-footed and confident, and being held in his arms felt safe and exciting all at once. "I am glad you came to Granite," Quinn said softly as they turned. "I know the circumstances were terrible, but I am still glad." "I am too," Hannah realized with some surprise. "A few weeks ago I felt like my life was over. Now I feel like maybe it is just beginning." "That is a good feeling," Quinn said, and his amber eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. The dance ended too soon, and Hannah reluctantly stepped back from Quinn's embrace. Around them, parents were gathering up tired children, and couples were saying their goodnights. The celebration was winding down. Quinn walked Hannah back to the store, a gesture of courtesy that made her heart warm. At the door to the stairway that led to her apartment, they paused. "Thank you for convincing me to come tonight," Hannah said. "I needed that more than I realized." "You are welcome," Quinn said. Then, almost shyly, "Would you like to come to dinner at the ranch tomorrow, Mrs. Chen has been asking about you, and I thought maybe we could go riding afterward if you would like. I could teach you if you do not know how." "I would love that," Hannah said, meaning it completely. Quinn's smile was radiant. "I will pick you up after church around 1 o'clock. I will be ready." Hannah watched him walk away down the moonlit street, then climbed the stairs to her apartment feeling lighter than she had in months. She changed into her nightgown and brushed out her hair, replaying the evening in her mind. The way Quinn had looked at her. The warmth of his hand on her waist. The feeling of being held and guided through the dance. She was falling for him, she realized. Despite her grief, despite the newness of everything, despite all the logical reasons why she should focus on establishing her business and her new life before thinking about romance. She was falling for Quinn Everett, and the realization both thrilled and terrified her. Sunday morning, Hannah dressed carefully in one of her new dresses, a soft blue cotton that Margaret had helped her sew. She attended services at the white clapboard church on the edge of town, sitting with Margaret and singing hymns from a battered hymnal. The pastor was a kind-faced man named Reverend Williams who welcomed her warmly after the service and told her he had been friends with her uncle. "Silas spoke of you often," Reverend Williams said. "He was proud of what you had accomplished in Philadelphia, working your way up in that dress shop. He said you had your father's determination." The words brought tears to Hannah's eyes, but they were good tears. It meant something to know that her uncle had thought well of her, even though they had never met. Quinn arrived precisely at 1 o'clock, driving the wagon with Mrs. Chen sitting beside him. The housekeeper beamed when she saw Hannah and immediately began fussing over how pretty she looked and how the Colorado air was putting color in her cheeks. Dinner at the ranch was a boisterous affair. The 4 ranch hands joined them again, and Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with roasted beef and potatoes and vegetables and pie for dessert. The men teased Quinn good-naturedly about having a lady friend, and Hannah found herself laughing at their jokes. After the meal, Quinn saddled 2 horses, a gentle mare for Hannah and a larger gelding for himself. He helped Hannah mount, his hands steady on her waist as he lifted her into the saddle and showed her how to hold the reins properly. "Just relax and let her do most of the work," Quinn advised. "Her name is Daisy, and she is as gentle as they come. She will follow my horse, so all you have to do is sit steady." They rode out across the ranch land at a slow walk, Quinn pointing out landmarks and telling her about the property. The mountains rose magnificent around them, and a cool breeze carried the scent of pine. Hannah felt herself relaxing into the rhythm of the horse's movement, trusting Daisy to carry her safely. They stopped beside the creek that cut through Quinn's property, and he helped Hannah dismount. They sat on the bank with their feet dangling over the water, watching the current swirl around rocks. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Quinn said. "When things get overwhelming, I come here to think." "I can see why," Hannah said. "It is peaceful." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Quinn said, "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Why did you not marry in Philadelphia? You are beautiful and accomplished. Surely there were men interested." Hannah looked down at her hands. "There was someone, actually. A man who worked in the bank near the dress shop. He courted me for almost a year, and I thought he was serious. But when my parents died and I lost everything, he suddenly became very busy. I learned later he had started courting the daughter of a wealthy shipping merchant." "He was a fool," Quinn said with feeling. "Maybe," Hannah said. "But it taught me something. I do not want someone who loves me for my connections or my prospects. I want someone who sees me, really sees who I am, and chooses me anyway." Quinn turned to look at her, and there was something fierce in his expression. "Then that man truly was a fool, because any man who could not see your worth does not deserve you." Hannah's heart hammered in her chest. "Quinn, I know this might be too fast," Quinn said, speaking quickly as though afraid he would lose his courage. "And I know you have been through so much and you probably need time, but I need you to know that I have feelings for you, Hannah. From the moment I saw you collapse on that platform, something in me knew you were important. And getting to know you these past weeks, watching you take on the store and make a place for yourself here, it has only made those feelings stronger." "I have feelings for you too," Hannah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I tried not to, tried to tell myself it was too soon and too complicated, but I do." Quinn reached out and took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Then can we see where this goes?" "No pressure, no promises, just see what happens." Hannah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Quinn leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she did not. When his lips met hers, gentle and questioning, she kissed him back. It was her first real kiss, sweet and perfect, and when they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling. "I have wanted to do that since the night of the dance," Quinn admitted. "I am glad you did," Hannah said. They rode back to the ranch, holding hands as much as they could while managing the horses. Mrs. Chen took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly, but said nothing. She packed up leftover pie for Hannah to take home and hugged her tightly before she climbed into the wagon. The next few weeks were the happiest Hannah could remember. Quinn courted her properly, bringing her flowers from the meadow and taking her on rides through the mountains. They had dinner together several times a week, sometimes at the ranch with Mrs. Chen and sometimes at the restaurant in town. Quinn helped her with the heavier work at the store, and Hannah began keeping cookies behind the counter that she knew he liked. The weather turned colder as September faded into October. Hannah ordered heavier goods for the store: wool blankets, warm coats, thick socks. She started a credit system for the families who worked the smaller claims in the mountains, knowing they would pay when they could. Business was steady, and she found she had a knack for merchandising, for knowing what people would want before they knew themselves. One evening in late October, Quinn arrived at the store after closing with a serious expression. Hannah was in the back doing inventory, and her stomach clenched with worry when she saw his face. "What is wrong?" she asked immediately. "Nothing is wrong," Quinn said. "But I need to talk to you about something important." He led her upstairs to her apartment and waited while she lit the lamps. When they sat at her small table, he took both her hands in his. "Hannah, I love you," he said simply. "I know we have only known each other a few months, but I am more certain of this than I have been of anything in my life. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the way you care for your customers and remember their names. I love your laugh and the way you bite your lip when you are concentrating. I love everything about you." Hannah felt tears spill down her cheeks. "I love you too, Quinn, so much." "Then marry me," Quinn said. "I know it might seem fast to some people, but out here things move differently. Life is uncertain and we should not waste time when we find something real. Marry me, Hannah, be my wife." "Yes," Hannah said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely yes." Quinn pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, and Hannah felt like her heart might burst from happiness. When they finally broke apart, both of them were laughing and crying at the same time. "I do not have a ring yet," Quinn admitted. "I wanted to ask you first, make sure you would say yes before I went to the jeweler in Leadville." "I do not need a ring," Hannah said. "I just need you." "You will have one anyway," Quinn promised. "The prettiest one I can find." They decided to marry in November, a small ceremony in the church with just their closest friends. Hannah wrote to Quinn's sister Emma in Denver, and Emma wrote back with an enthusiastic letter and a promise to come for the wedding. Mrs. Chen immediately took charge of planning, enlisting Margaret Fletcher and several other women to help with the preparations. Hannah closed the store for a day to travel with Quinn to Leadville, where he bought her a gold band set with a small diamond. He slipped it on her finger in the jewelry shop, and she turned her hand in the light, marveling at how the stone sparkled. "It is perfect," she whispered. "You are perfect," Quinn replied. The wedding took place on a crisp Saturday in mid-November. Hannah wore a dress she had sewn herself from cream-colored silk that Margaret had ordered specially. Margaret and Emma stood up with her as witnesses, while Quinn's ranch foreman, a grizzled man named Pete, stood with him. Reverend Williams performed the ceremony, and Hannah's voice was steady as she promised to love and honor Quinn for the rest of her life. When Quinn kissed her as his wife, the small church erupted in applause and cheers. They walked out into the November sunshine as husband and wife, and Hannah felt like she was floating. The townspeople had organized a reception in the church hall, with food and music and dancing. Hannah danced with Quinn, with Pete, with Dr. Morrison, with everyone who asked. She was hugged by what felt like half the town, all of them wishing her happiness. As evening fell, Quinn drove her back to the ranch in the wagon, both of them wrapped in heavy coats against the cold. Mrs. Chen had moved her belongings from the apartment to the ranch house while they were at the church, and the bedroom Quinn had given her that first night had been transformed into a proper bridal chamber with fresh flowers and new linens. That night, Hannah truly became Quinn's wife in every sense. He was gentle and patient with her inexperience, and when he held her afterward, she felt completely safe and loved. They talked late into the night, making plans for their future, dreaming about the children they would have and the life they would build together. The next morning, Hannah woke wrapped in Quinn's arms and could not stop smiling. He kissed her forehead and told her he loved her, and they stayed in bed until Mrs. Chen knocked on the door to announce breakfast was ready. Over the next few weeks, Hannah and Quinn settled into married life. They kept the apartment above the store so Hannah could stay in town when she needed to work late or when weather made the trip to the ranch difficult. But most nights she was at the ranch with Quinn, learning to be both a wife and a partner in running the property. She discovered that she loved ranch life more than she had expected. She learned to ride well enough to accompany Quinn when he checked on the cattle. She helped Mrs. Chen with the garden and the preserving. She even learned to shoot, though she was not very good at it, which made Quinn laugh. The store continued to thrive. Hannah expanded the fabric and sewing supplies based on requests from the women in town, and started carrying ready-made children's clothes that she sewed herself in the evenings. She hired a young man named Timothy to help with the heavy lifting, and to mind the store when she needed to be at the ranch. Winter came hard and early that year, with snow piling deep in the mountain passes. The supply wagons could only make it through once every 2 weeks instead of weekly, so Hannah had to be more careful with her inventory planning. But the store stayed warm and well lit, and people came as much for the conversation as for the supplies. On Christmas Eve, Quinn and Hannah hosted a dinner at the ranch for anyone who had nowhere else to go. Mrs. Chen cooked for days, preparing a feast of turkey and ham and all the trimmings. Pete and the other ranch hands came, along with Dr. Morrison, Margaret Fletcher, Timothy from the store, and half a dozen others who would have been alone otherwise. They sang carols and exchanged small gifts and told stories late into the night. When everyone had finally gone home or retired to the bunkhouse, Quinn pulled Hannah close by the fire. "This is what I always wanted," he said softly. "A home full of love and laughter. A good woman beside me. Thank you for giving me that." "Thank you for finding me at that train station," Hannah replied. "For seeing someone worth saving when I was too exhausted to save myself." "I will always find you," Quinn promised. "No matter what, I will always come for you." In February, Hannah realized her monthly courses had not come. She waited another week to be sure, then confided in Mrs. Chen, who confirmed what Hannah had suspected. She was carrying Quinn's child. She told him that evening as they sat together after dinner, suddenly nervous despite knowing he would be overjoyed. "Quinn, I have something to tell you. I am with child." For a moment Quinn just stared at her, as though the words had not registered. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests to be careful. "We are having a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "A son or a daughter, our child." "Our child," Hannah confirmed and felt tears of happiness on her cheeks. Quinn was impossibly gentle with her after that, insisting she should not lift heavy things at the store and fretting whenever she rode a horse. Hannah tolerated his worry because she knew it came from love, but she also made it clear she had no intention of spending the next 7 months sitting idle. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. She reminded him when he suggested she should close the store and rest. "I am healthy and strong. Dr. Morrison says everything is fine. I will not break." "I just want you safe," Quinn said. "Both of you." Spring came slowly that year, the snow melting gradually to reveal muddy roads and the first green shoots in Mrs. Chen's garden. Hannah's belly grew round and pronounced, and she had to let out her dresses to accommodate her changing shape. She felt the baby move for the first time in April, a flutter like butterfly wings that made her catch her breath in wonder. The store had to close for a week in early May when Hannah came down with a fever that Dr. Morrison treated with bed rest and cool compresses. Quinn barely left her side, and she could see the fear in his eyes even though he tried to hide it. But the fever broke on the 3rd day, and Dr. Morrison pronounced both her and the baby out of danger. "You gave me a scare," Quinn admitted when they were alone. "I kept thinking about losing my mother, about what it would mean to lose you." "You are not going to lose me," Hannah said firmly. "I am too stubborn for that." In late June, the baby came early one morning just as the sun was rising. Mrs. Chen had moved into the ranch house for the final weeks of Hannah's pregnancy, and she sent Pete racing to town for Dr. Morrison while she helped Hannah through the initial pains. Quinn held Hannah's hand through the long hours of labor, wiping her forehead with cool cloths and murmuring encouragement. When the baby finally came, squalling and red-faced and perfect, the doctor placed him in Hannah's arms. "A son," Dr. Morrison announced with satisfaction. "Small but healthy, with excellent lungs." Quinn stared at the baby with such love and awe that Hannah felt fresh tears on her cheeks. "He is beautiful," Quinn whispered. "He looks like you. He has your eyes," Hannah pointed out. The baby's eyes were still the blue of all newborns, but she could already see they would darken to amber like his father's. They named him Samuel Thomas Everett, after both their fathers. Samuel grew quickly despite his early arrival, a happy baby who rarely cried and smiled early. Quinn was devoted to him, often carrying Samuel around the ranch in a sling Mrs. Chen had made, talking to him about the cattle and the horses as though the baby could understand. Hannah returned to the store when Samuel was 6 weeks old, bringing him with her in a basket. The women of Granite cooed over him and brought gifts of knitted blankets and tiny clothes. Timothy proved surprisingly adept at making faces to keep the baby entertained while Hannah worked. Life fell into a rhythm that felt both busy and deeply satisfying. Hannah managed the store and cared for Samuel, with help from Quinn and Mrs. Chen and the network of friends she had built in Granite. Quinn ran the ranch and expanded his herd, hiring 2 more men to help with the increased workload. They were building something together, a life and a legacy. When Samuel was 8 months old and trying determinedly to crawl, Hannah discovered she was pregnant again. This time Quinn was more confident, less worried, though still protective. Their daughter Mary Elizabeth was born in early spring, smaller than Samuel had been but just as healthy. She had Hannah's dark hair and Quinn's stubborn chin. The years passed in a blur of joy and hard work and occasional challenges. A harsh winter killed several head of cattle, and they had to carefully manage their finances to recover. The store thrived, expanding to take over the empty building next door and doubling in size. Hannah hired 2 more employees and began carrying luxury items ordered from catalogs for the wealthier families in the area. Samuel and Mary were joined by another son, James, when Samuel was 4. Then twin girls, Louisa and Catherine, arrived when Hannah was 32 and insisted that this would absolutely be her last pregnancy. Quinn agreed, partly because he worried about her health and partly because he said their house was already bursting at the seams with love and noise. The ranch house was expanded twice to accommodate the growing family. Quinn proved to be a wonderful father, patient and loving, teaching his children to ride and work and treat everyone with respect. Hannah taught them to read and write, and when Granite finally got a proper schoolteacher, all the Everett children excelled in their studies. On their 10th anniversary, Quinn took Hannah back to the creek where he had first told her he loved her. The children were safely with Mrs. Chen, who was now in her 70s but still as sharp as ever. Quinn spread a blanket on the bank and they sat together, watching the water flow past. "You ever regret it?" Quinn asked. "Staying in Granite, marrying me, building this life. You could have gone back east, found something easier." "Never," Hannah said without hesitation. "This life with you and our children, it is everything I never knew I needed. Yes, it has been hard sometimes, but it has also been so full of joy and love. I would not change a single thing." "Not even that first day when you collapsed at the station, too exhausted to stand," Quinn teased. "Especially not that," Hannah said, turning to kiss him. "Because that is when I found you, when you lifted me into your wagon and carried me somewhere safe. That is when my real life began." Quinn pulled her close, and they sat together as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. They had built a good life together in this wild, beautiful place, full of love and family and purpose. Samuel grew up to take over management of the ranch, expanding it even further and eventually buying the property that adjoined Quinn's land. He married the schoolteacher, a bright young woman named Alice who had come from Boston, and they had 4 children who kept the ranch house ringing with laughter. Mary followed her mother into business, taking over the general store when Hannah finally decided to step back. She modernized the inventory system and started a mail-order business that served the mining camps scattered throughout the mountains. She married a quiet man named David who worked as an accountant and helped her manage the finances. James became a veterinarian, studying in Denver before returning to Granite to care for the horses and cattle that were the lifeblood of the community. He married young and had 7 children, making Quinn joke that he was trying to populate the entire county with Everetts. Louisa became a teacher like her sister-in-law, running the school in Granite with warmth and discipline. Catherine, always the most adventurous of the children, moved to Denver to work as a journalist but came home every summer without fail. Mrs. Chen lived to see all the Everett children grown and married before she passed peacefully in her sleep at age 83. They buried her in the Granite cemetery with a headstone that read, "Beloved Friend." And Quinn cried openly at the service, mourning the woman who had helped raise him after his mother died and had been such an important part of his life. As Quinn and Hannah grew older, they slowly handed over the daily operations of both the ranch and the store to their children. They spent their time traveling to visit Catherine in Denver, spoiling their grandchildren, and sitting on the porch of the ranch house watching the mountains change with the seasons. On a warm evening in late summer, when Hannah was 68 and Quinn 70, they sat on that porch together as fireflies danced in the gathering dusk. Hannah's hair was silver now, Quinn's too, and his hands were gnarled from decades of ranch work. But when he reached over to take her hand, his grip was still strong and steady. "I was thinking about that first day again," Quinn said. "When you got off the train and collapsed at the station, you were wearing that black dress and you looked so lost, so alone." And I remember thinking I needed to help you, that something about you called to me. I was lost, Hannah agreed. I had lost my parents, traveled across the country to meet an uncle who was already dead. I had nothing and no one, and then you lifted me into your wagon and took me somewhere safe. You gave me everything, Quinn. We gave each other everything, Quinn corrected gently. You made me believe in love again. You gave me a family and a purpose beyond just working the ranch. You made my life richer than I ever imagined it could be. Hannah leaned her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him. Do you remember what you said to me at the creek that day? You said you would always find me, always come for me. You have kept that promise every single day of our marriage. And I always will, Quinn said, kissing the top of her head. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge overhead, the same stars that had shone on them 50 years earlier when they first fell in love. Around them, the ranch was alive with activity as their children and grandchildren went about their evening routines. Voices called out greetings, children laughed, horses whinnied in the corral. Listen to that, Hannah said softly. All the life we created together. The family we built from nothing. It is more than I ever dreamed possible. It is everything, Quinn agreed. As darkness fell completely and the mountain air turned cool, they rose from their chairs and went inside hand in hand. The house was full of photographs on the walls, capturing moments from their 50 years together. Their wedding day. Each child as a baby. Family gatherings at Christmas. Grandchildren playing in the creek. That night they lay in the bed they had shared for decades, holding each other close. Hannah felt grateful for every moment they had been given, for the love that had sustained them through joy and sorrow, through challenges and triumphs. She had boarded that train in Philadelphia, a broken woman with nothing left to lose. She had stumbled onto a platform in a dusty Colorado town, too exhausted to stand. And then Quinn Everett had lifted her into his wagon and carried her toward a future she never could have imagined. A future full of love and family and purpose. A future that had become the most beautiful life she could have asked for. I love you, Hannah whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Quinn replied, his voice warm and certain, always and forever. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms. Two people who had found each other when they needed it most, and had built something lasting and true. Outside, the Colorado mountains stood eternal under the stars, watching over the family that had made their home in the valley below. The ranch would continue for generations. The store would serve the community for decades more. And the love story of Quinn and Hannah Everett would be told and retold, until it became part of the very fabric of Granite's history. But that was all in the future. For now, there was just an old couple sleeping peacefully together, their hands still intertwined even in sleep, having lived a life full of the kind of love that most people only dream about. They had taken a chance on each other when everything else seemed lost, and that chance had given them everything worth having. It was, in every way that mattered, the perfect ending to a story that had begun with exhaustion and uncertainty, but had transformed into something beautiful and enduring. A story that proved love could be found in the most unexpected places, even on a dusty train platform in a frontier town, when a cowboy lifted a stranger into his wagon and changed both their lives forever.